Alright, welcome. This tutorial is going to try and show you how we can use the likes of styles and formatting options to make professionally looking documents in word processing. Now I'm using Office 2010, but a lot of these tools and features are available in previous versions of Office, and in fact in lots of other different word processing applications such as OpenOffice. So it may look a little bit different from what you've got on your screen, but the concepts are the same. So I've got a document that's got some pretty unique or different formatting throughout, whereby we're jumping around styles, and I've deliberately put in some quite weird styles in terms of crossouts, strike-throughs, different font sizes, colours, etc., which would actually take quite a long time to strip out all the formatting and reformat accordingly. So what I'm going to try and show you now is how we can use these things across the top here called styles to apply formatting options consistently. So we've got some specific instructions across the top of this document for formatting things, and we'll try and do those as we come through. So first off, what we want to try and do is to come through and identify what are our headings and what are our subheadings. It's quite useful to do this with the hidden characters turned on, which will allow us to work out when someone has pushed the enter key. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select each of these subheadings or side headings to make these stand out based on these instructions. So across the top there at the moment it's saying normal. I'm going to say that this is going to be a heading. Don't worry if it's looking a little bit different from the instructions across the top. We'll come back and look at those in a moment. Now if I wanted to, I can come through and select these each time, but it will take quite a long time for me to go about doing that. So I'm going to use the Format Painter tool by double clicking it, and that will allow me to apply this formatting that I've previously selected to be painted on or applied to anything now that I select. Okay, so you can see now it's happening relatively quickly. Okay, so working out what are the side or subheadings for my particular document. Okay, so it's important that you are quite methodical when you come through and do this, so that you don't miss any side headings. There's nothing worse than missing out an assessment because you just missed a couple of silly mistakes. Okay, so there are all of my headings selected. I'm going to push the escape key, or I could double click on the Format Painter tool to turn that option off. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my paragraphs and apply normal font. Now this is going to convert any text back into its original font style. Hasn't quite done it down here, but this will quickly fall into place in a moment. Okay, so I'm just going to select it again. Again, just checking to make sure everything is doing as you'd expect. Clicking on normal, and it's going back to now to being Times New Roman 12 point, which is what old documents used to always be set as. The new versions of Office will use Calibri 11 point, which is quite a nice sans serif style of font, and we may look at applying some different formatting throughout, because the instructions across the top of the page in the header don't tell us what particular font we should be using. Okay, so coming towards the bottom now, we've now gone through and selected all of our fonts, all of our paragraphs based on our selections, and across the top here I'm going to say that this is a title to make it stand out. And you should notice that the title is made to be stand out in terms of size, and this other embellishments across the underneath it to try and make things stand out. We do have some quite large gaps through here, but the gaps underneath these headings aren't too large. So one of the things that we can do in this particular document is, now that we've selected all these headings, I can say, hey look, I want to select all of my headings that are in my document. So for instance, highlight my heading, come at the top here, and let's select all of my headings. And it's come through my document now and highlighted all of my headings, which I could then quickly update based on the selection or options that it talks about. So it says to make them bolded, italicized, 14 point Arial. So I could do it that way, or I could take a single selection and make changes based on what it wants us to do. And the next thing would be to apply some paragraph options for doing 9-point spacing after, so I can just type that in, and I might think that that's a little bit extreme to go down up to 24 point, just reduce that down. So you can see now the heading is a little bit further above the main paragraph, just to make that heading stand out a wee bit. Now I've made that change to one of these styles, or these styled headings, and I can now come up here and update the heading one to match my current selection. And by doing that, that will apply that to all of my subheadings throughout. Next thing I might want to do is to update all of my normal headings, normal styles I should say. Okay, so I might say, look, really want that to be Calibri and say 11 point. Now update or modify, or I could make additional option choices if I was to use the modifier. I could select all 23 options or update to match the current selection. So I'm going to use this modify tool just to show some of the additional options that we've got. You could apply font sizes, you can apply additional paragraph options, and that's one of the things that it wants you to do. In the header it says to apply 6-point spacing after all, which I'm going to apply now. Okay. I'm going to set it back to being Calibri for the main body, and I could also set the main size. Okay. And you can see now through the running of the document, anytime there's a new paragraph, there's a bit more of a gap in between, just to make our paragraph stand out, but not so much that we have to push the enter button twice. If you've got to push the enter button twice to make a paragraph stand out, you're not really utilising the features and tools in that word processing program. Okay, so that's pretty much styles in a nutshell. If we're wanting to do a few other cool things, we might decide we don't quite like the colour choices that they've applied for this particular style, and we could look at updating these based on the style set. And you can see that there's a range of these, which some of them look quite nice, and some of these could work quite well for you. And the likes of some of your other styles, and it's just a matter of checking out some of those options in there. You can also change the likes of different colour options for adjusting some of those headings and subheadings to your tastes. Another couple of things I'd like to show before I go is the fact that under the page layout option we can apply these themes, and using these themes we'll come up with a bunch of predetermined styles for formatting, such as fonts, paragraph options, etc. And again, they can be applied to make some quite attractive looking documents. So you can see I haven't done too much in the way of adjusting things. It looks quite attractive now. I've simply used some of the themes, I've applied those styles across the top. Lastly, it talks about having page breaks in appropriate places. So when I come down the running of my page, you should notice that there is no headings all by itself down towards the bottom. And in fact, if I was to try and bring this down a little bit further down, just by pushing the enter key, as a minimum it won't let me take anything more than, or leave 2 lines of text, or less than 2 lines of text by itself. And these are simple options called pagination. You can find those by selecting the paragraph tool, and under line and page breaks you can see it's got widow orphan control. Because of used styles, these are set automatically. If you don't use styles, you need to be very careful to ensure that you don't have lines all by themselves. You must have at least 2 lines. So, taking those options there off, some other things that we can find quite useful in the pagination options is to keep lines together, keep lines with next. So we might have a paragraph which we really would like to keep together. So for instance, we might think that this is really important that we don't break this onto a separate page. So by using these together, we could say, look, I want to keep all of these lines together. Probably don't want to keep with next because that would keep things with the following paragraph. So we could look at turning those particular options off. By doing that, we do want to apply it to this heading, however, we want to keep that with next. So keep with next, and then by doing that, if we come to the running of the bottom of the page, this will always be grouped together. That's not one of the requirements for this particular document, so I'll turn those off. Lastly, it's asked you to apply a table of contents. A table of contents can be quite long and to apply, but there's an easy way now that we've applied these styles that we can put in this table of contents. So I'm going to do a page break at this point. You can put a page break in by hitting the page layout tab, inserting a break, or by pushing Control Enter on my keyboard to do the same thing. I'm going to come back up to this option here, and then under the References tab, add a table of contents to automatically insert a table of contents with the page numbers updated if I make any changes. For instance, if I was to come down to the bottom of the page and then change where the history is by pushing another page break, history is now going to be on an additional page, and you can see it is on page 6 of 7. I come up towards the top here, right click in my table of contents, I can look at updating my particular field, or coming up the top and deciding to update my table and updating the page numbers only, and my page number has updated from 5 to 6. So that's how you can use a table of contents, and obviously any changes that to make to the running of the document, you can simply come up here and update the page numbers. So some easy ways to make attractive looking documents using the likes of styles. So hopefully you find these useful. You don't have to use these for the likes of assessments, but I'm hopeful that you can see the advantages of using styles. Thank you.